I, 40 male, trusted my wife, 33 female, because she never gave me a reason to worry before. We were successful in love and had a great sex life. I didn't see an end to our relationship, and I never expected her to want anyone or anything else. If there was anything my wife was good at, it was communication. She talked to me all day every day, either through text or in person when we were off work. We had some hard conversations over our many years of marriage that resulted in us compromising and growing closer. I was a highly paid accountant for a company that everyone has heard of. We made plenty of money on my income alone, so my wife retired early and started specializing in property management, our house, and flea marketing. Our house and landscape was beautifully cared for by her. She picked what to plant outside and never missed a day cleaning out the gutters. The one thing neither of us had any experience or skill in was mechanics. One month my daily driver gave out. I had no idea what was wrong, so it was town to the nearest repair shop. I started driving our backup car only for it to die on me 3 minutes from home. That one was towed to the same mechanic as well. While I carpool to work, my wife started communicating with the mechanic. She said it would be pretty expensive, but worth it to keep the cars instead of buying new ones. We weren't worried about money, so she told me it would be taken care of. I didn't think anything about it for months. Our cars were back and working just fine. A year and some months passed, and for all that time, she slept with me less and less frequently until it was non-existent. I tried a few times to ask her about it and tell her how much I missed it and needed it. She just said she was going through a lot that week, or she was going through a phase where she didn't need or have time for sex. When it didn't improve, I suggested she see her doctor, but she said she could get through it on her own given enough time. So I backed off and gave her time, but I continued to love her any way I could. I prepared a romantic dinner for her and gave her a foot massage when I came home from work. I could tell she was uncomfortable with my doting and felt guilty. The next morning, I was at work when I got a family locator notification. It said my wife's phone was about to die, but it always said that. I accidentally clicked on the notification, and it brought me to my wife's current location. She was on the mechanic's property. I freaked out, and my mind started racing. I could only feel devastation, even though I didn't know what was going on yet. I went to my boss and told him what I discovered and that I felt it necessary to look into it. He let me go for the day. I pulled up behind my wife's empty car and walked towards the garage. When I rounded the corner, I could see that behind a pickup truck on a garage couch, my wife was having sex with our mechanic. I covered my mouth to stop myself from making any noise and pulled up my phone camera with a shaking hand. I took several pictures from under the truck, making sure my wife's face was identifiable. Then I sprang out and yelled at them. They jumped and started frantically dressing. My wife just repeated, "My God," over and over again. Looking into my pleading eyes, my wife started telling me that he was just helping her, but it didn't mean anything beyond that, and it shouldn't take meaning from our marriage. All I could say was that he was supposed to work on cars, not my wife. My vision turned black around the edges and I punched AP. He went down, out cold. I grabbed my wife's hand and drove her home to talk. Words can't express how betrayed I felt. We were in each other's life for more than 20 years. She was the one person in the world I could trust to be there for me with unconditional love like I gave her. At home, I asked her why I was enough. She cried hard as she tried to explain that she was basically bored of our routine and so used to me that she would fantasize whenever we made love. Through tears, I told her to leave, but she refused and begged me to stay with her. I asked her why she never told me how she felt. I asked her why we couldn't have done something else, anything else to get back the spark. She just cried and said she messed up. She made the worst mistake of her life, and she needed my forgiveness. I asked her how many times they slept together. She couldn't look at me. She just sobbed. I figured it was a lot for over a year. I wouldn't forgive her for this. I showed her the pictures I took and told her to leave, this time more serious, with tears drying on my face. The woman in this picture was not my wife. My wife would never do that to me. I told her she could be this woman all she wanted now because I accepted that my wife was gone. It was extremely hard to go through this, so I called my brother over. He was 10 years older, and it was great to have him there while my wife packed. He kept me distracted and thinking about possibilities. The pictures I snapped took away any chance my wife had at keeping the house or my money. She was forced to get a job so she could afford to live on her own, paying rent for a closet-sized apartment without a yard. I posted the pictures on the garage's Google reviews and his website. That was all it took for him to lose his customer base and reputation. None of his male customers trusted him to get close to their family or talk to their wives with good reason. I've been dating another woman for 3 years now. She has children that look up to me as an example, and I love it every day. I got through the worst betrayal of my life and found a new wonderful reality I never would have experienced if not for going through a divorce. I am so sorry to hear that your wife cheated on you with your mechanic. She never had to do that, but she chose to. You did the right thing by driving to the garage as soon as you saw her location. Not only did you catch her in her lies and cheating, but you also obtained proof. It's extremely fortunate you were able to prove what she did to you for the betterment of your post-divorce life. Spouses work together every day by trusting the other to remain honorable at all times, valuing the relationship. Your ex proved she couldn't do that for you. And she behaved in a way that no one should tolerate. I'm happy to hear that you have a wife and family in your life, there to love and cherish you the way you deserve. Chances are going through life, you're bound to meet people that will hurt you, but there's also plenty of people that won't. Thank you for sharing with us. Let's now get into our second story for today. I was 23 when I let my wife, 22 female, move in with me. We were only dating for 6 months when she told me she was pregnant, so I immediately started preparing to become a family. I let her move in and convinced myself to be ready because this was a consequence of my actions. Well, it turned out she wasn't pregnant, but she was already added to my lease. I thought about how silly it would be for me to ask her to move back out just because it was too early in the relationship to live together. It was already happening, and I loved her at the time. I was nervous though. Something told me I needed to stay on my toes, and take extra care not to get her pregnant. I had conversations with her where I said I hoped to be married someday, and wanted to be sure I could spend the rest of my life committed to her. I was expecting her to say something similar back to me, but instead she just agreed happily, like what I said was romantic, but she didn't understand the weight of it. I continued living with her and loving her, growing closer and closer to her, even though she never really told me she was looking to commit herself to someone for the rest of her life. I just figured that's what people did. They dated or lived together until they decided to get married because no one else could be a better match. After living together for 3 years, we got married. My wife didn't have any friends of her own, so she got to know mine over the years. I didn't mind because she was a very caring girl who deserved to have friends. She also became really good friends with Andrew's sister Jenny. They started going out together, and it was a huge relief for my wife. With girl time ticked off her list of needs, she had more love and energy to give me. Ironically, it was right around this time that I started to have faith in our marriage. One day, I had 2 of my friends over to play cards while my wife was out with Jenny. Andrew couldn't make it for gay night because he had a college class to go to. 2 hours into the evening, I still haven't heard anything from my wife. She usually sent me a text to let me know how things were going. I was about to text Jenny to ask her how things were going, but she texted me first. She said she had something important to tell me and wanted to know when was a good time to call. I was confused and worried, so I called her. The first truth was that my wife never planned to meet with Jenny that night. The second truth was that Jenny got home and accidentally heard Andrew and my wife having sex in his room. She didn't know it was my wife until she saw her sneak out of the house minutes prior. Just then, while I was still on the phone with Jenny, my wife walked in the house. I dropped the phone and yelled for her to get out. I started hyperventilating, so my friends jumped up and asked what was going on. My wife looked like she just killed someone. Her eyes were huge, filled with tears, and she wanted to help me. But she knew she couldn't. She knew she was the one that did this to me. Of course, she mouthed sorry to me, but all I could do was tell her to leave and get out. I couldn't look at her, so one of my friends sat with me, and the other helped her focus on packing some stuff and leaving. He pressured her to leave, and it was a huge weight off my shoulders. While she packed, I told them it was Andrew if she slept with, and they couldn't believe it. The four of us had been friends since middle school, and my wife just ripped us apart. I wanted to commit myself to the right woman, and here was my wife going behind my back to sleep with a good friend of mine. I finally trusted her and decided to marry her only for her to make my worst fear a reality. My friends helped me get revenge on Andrew by throwing a few dozen eggs into his room through an open window. He was no longer invited to our card games. My wife and I did have a few phone calls after this, but they all ended with me hanging up on her. She confessed she developed feelings for Andrew after getting to know him for a while. And when she told him how she felt, he reciprocated her feelings. They were snapping pics back and forth for at least a year. To persuade me to forgive her, she told me she regretted cheating on me immediately after it happened. My thought process is that my wife could stop talking to Andrew at any time. As soon as she realized she was developing feelings for him, or even before that, she should have put a stop to it. There was a woman that tried to befriend me over Facebook for months while I was married. As soon as I gave in and told her we could be friends, she immediately started flirting with me. I blocked her, and I told my wife about it. She thanked me for letting her know without admitting what was happening with AP. I am so thankful we never conceived. 2 months after our divorce, she became pregnant with Andrew. They got married and his parents paid for the down payment on their house. It was never meant to last though. They got a divorce after the child was born with a completely different skin color. She tried to get child support from AP, but he had run off. Only an extremely careless and immature woman lies and sleeps with her husband's friend behind his back. Unfortunately, she has a lot of growing up to do now with a child of her own. It's a shame how dumped down and sexualized things have become. Even shows or apps that minors watch and use have subliminal messages or absolutely no moral value at all. It takes an exceptionally wise person to see through these temptations and decide to place value in themselves and the decisions they make. Choose carefully what your eyes, ears, and mind absorb, and always remember you are the only one that can control your thoughts, emotions, and tongue. Life is far more exciting with a little restraint, wisdom, and respect for the people you love. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.